Good morning and welcome. It's now 10 o'clock. I'm handing over to Mrs. Lisa Reed. Lisa, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Renier. Good morning and welcome to today's SAMAREC webinar. On behalf of the South African Medical Association Research Ethics Committee, we are pleased to engage with you, our industry colleagues and research applicants. For those not aware, I am Lisa Reed, the SAMA Research Ethics Officer. This session is designed to provide clarity on the ethics review process, highlight key expectations for submissions, and strengthen collaboration between applicants and the committee. Our shared goal is to ensure that research conducted in South Africa upholds the highest ethical standards, protects participants, and contributes to credible, high-quality science. We value your commitment to responsible research and look forward to an open, constructive discussion. Firstly, I would like to introduce Dr. Nasheen Naidu, the SAMAREC chairperson. Academically, Dr. Naidu's qualifications reflect a deep and interdisciplinary engagement with medicine and public health. He is a specialist clinical pathologist and holds a Master of Public Health and prior degrees in medical sciences. This unique combination of clinical, laboratory, and public health expertise underpins his leadership in medical ethics. His commitment is to advancing research standards and contributing to strengthening diagnostic and public health systems in South Africa and beyond. Over to you, Dr. Naidu.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Lisa, for that very kind introduction. So once again, welcome, good morning and welcome to everyone attending today. I'd once again like to thank you all for this opportunity for us to engage with you. Is my presentation clear?
It's there, thank you.
Good, thanks. So I'm going to talk very briefly today about the National Department of Health Research Ethics Guidelines, and especially the update that occurred in 2024. So the subsequent version or edition of the Ethics Guideline version 2 was in 2015, and it has been updated in 2024, and a subsequent revision has happened in 2025 to version 3.1. And also to give you some insight into how SAMAREC's attempting to align these guidelines to our current practice. So as I mentioned, it's now been updated from the 2015 version to the 2024/25 version 3.1. And this document is now a legally binding national guideline with regards to health research ethics. The changes that have occurred over the last 9 years have been an evolution in response to rapid technological advances over these years, as well as the lessons learned from public health emergencies, specifically the COVID-19 pandemic. And as previous, the goal of this document and these guidelines is to strengthen national ethics systems, protect research participants, and to ensure fairness in health research. Zooming out to the core ethical principles which this document espouses, in addition to the grand pillars of medical research ethics, which is autonomy, justice, beneficence, and non-maleficence. So this would involve respect for persons, hence the autonomy. So informed consent is the core of the work that we do within SAMAREC. So the informed consent documents and processes is very important to SAMAREC, and that's one of the main documents that we spend a lot of time and energy on reviewing when we receive research proposals. Secondly, scientific merit. It's very important that sound, feasible research that's being presented to research ethics committees has to be reviewed. Looking at, in terms of justice, the equitable selection of participants and the sharing of benefits from all the research protocols and proposals that come through. And beneficence, non-maleficence, this is to maximize benefit and minimize harm. So we're always sort of looking at research proposals that come to us through these lenses. How is this maximizing benefit for patients and patients' health while minimizing harm to them at the same time? Also key to the document is the principle of Ubuntu, which essentially underlines or underpins all principles in terms of respect, compassion, and harmony. Another addition to the new guidelines is the strengthened Research Ethics Committee governance structures, specifically terms of reference and SOPs. So the terms of reference documents are now legally binding. The standard operating procedures from research ethics committees must be treated as living documents, and these are updated annually. So both SAMAREC's terms of reference and SOPs are available in the public domain on our website. SAMAREC's SOPs are reviewed annually and updated annually. So in essence, we have been living up to that living documents recommendation. Institution obligation. SAMA is our institutional overseer, and they provide adequate administrative and resource support as well. In addition, the 2024 guidelines have made recommendations for ethics committee composition, which should include experts in qualitative research. SAMAREC now has one to three members who've had extensive research in qualitative methodology, as well as having a legally qualified member. SAMAREC is currently having the benefit of 2 legally qualified members in family health law and ethics on our committee, and they're involved in review of proposals as well. One big change has also been the mandatory training and competence requirements as recommended by the 2024 guidelines. So all research ethics committee members, administrators, researchers, as well as students involved in the research are required to have assessed ethics training, not just on attendance only. So some form of assessment must be conducted during the training sessions with proof of passing, I would guess, of the course. Principal investigators must have had recent ethics and good clinical practice training within the last 3 years. And it's the Research Ethics Committee's responsibility, i.e. SAMAREC, to track and verify compliance for all of these to all the proposals that we receive. Some changes to the review process. The scientific review of the proposal must be completed before ethics review, and that would fall on the researchers themselves to ensure that proper and rigorous scientific review has been conducted on their proposals before they submit for ethics review. With regards to qualitative research studies, these must show a rigorous methodology from a theoretical point of view, have the correct qualitative experts involved, and undergo review for a new and emerging research methodology and designs. We also review rapid reviews for emergency protocols, especially during the COVID pandemic, when proposals were coming in very frequently. We would assign 3 to 5 reviewers and keep very strict records of this process. Also new to the guidelines is the reciprocal recognition with other accredited RECs. So it's encouraged that other RECs can review the same study that you are currently reviewing, and their concerns would be taken into consideration when we review as well. And moving on to expanded ethical obligations in the new guidelines, the POPIA Act has now been accounted for, so compliance to the POPIA Act must be included in all studies that are submitted to SAMAREC. Data protection is paramount, and blanket consent for future use of data is not recommended. So SAMAREC will look very closely at studies that do propose blanket consent for future use of data. With the advent of artificial intelligence and data science coming to the fore, we've now had to build our capacity in this new area, to be able to assess the inherent biases that come with artificial intelligence, and also looking at fairness, accountability in this new science, and also the option to co-opt experts if we feel that our committee is unable to assess proposals that are heavily involved with AI and data science. Also, the protection of vulnerable groups, so specifically children and incapacitated adults, has also been mentioned in the updated guidelines. Reimbursements has also been outlined in the new guidelines as well. So reimbursements are strictly for time, inconvenience, and expense that have been incurred as being a part of the study, and we have to ensure that undue inducement is not part of the research proposals that we review. A word on traditional medicines, studies that are revolving around traditional medicines, cultural rights, safety, intellectual property should be respected and protected. So in conclusion, just a quick summary on this update. So it's important that research ethics committees update their terms of reference and SOPs and see it as an annual review or regular review as a living document. Research ethics training would now need to be an assessed ethics training. Our review processes have to be looked at in terms of scientific rigor, qualitative rigor, as well as for rapid reviews. Our monitoring and compliance systems from the ethics committee would need to be strengthened. POPIA and artificial intelligence ethical issues would also need to be considered by researchers as well as the ethics committees, and vulnerable populations would need to be protected very rigorously. And finally, a culture of continuous learning and adoption should permeate all the work in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naidu. Next up is our Vice Chairperson, Tanya Kutsia. She is a Research Ethics Officer in the Research and Innovation Directorate at WITS. Tanya has many years of experience in research ethics review and is a strong candidate for the importance of addressing local needs and contextualizing research in Africa within global research policies and procedures. She has received recognition as Research Management of Professionals by the International Professional Recognition Council in 2024, and she is involved in various initiatives and projects emerging in the bioethics field. Thank you, Tanya.
Good morning, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Let me just get my presentation in full mode. You can see it?
Not yet.
Okay. Just stop sharing then there, this one. Sorry, people, let me just get the right screen up. I think I forgot to press share. Can you see it now?
It's coming up. It's coming up.
Okay, cool. There it
There
is.
you go. Thank you.
Sorry for that. Good breather after the introduction from Prof. Naidu, Dr. Naidu. But anyway, here we are. Here we go. So let me just get to my next slide. So I will be introducing the importance of research integrity in compliance and compliance of so many guidelines and so many changes that we see and have seen. Just in 2024, we had a declaration, the new declaration from the Helsinki, from the World Medical Association. We also saw the ICH with a new R3 edition in 2024. So we need to keep up. So while there are many definitions that's existing currently, I particularly find this one very focused on what we strive to do in research studies. So research integrity runs deeply, like a golden thread, through all the stages of the research ecosystem. In this definition, from the authors They highlight then that it is the incorporation of principles of honesty, transparency, and respect for ethical standards and norms throughout all stages. We cannot divorce, for example, research integrity and research ethics. They are cohabitants of the research process, and the research study then you should incorporate research integrity in all phases, which is then, for example, your study design, your data collection, your analysis, the reporting, and publishing. So, what should be then why should it be important to us in science, the relevance of research integrity? It has a dual purpose. While it is safeguarding the researcher's professional career, is also ensuring societal trust in research and science. It also allows the researchers to trust, the scientists and the researchers to trust one another and their data results, which inevitably will instill the trust from the public, because we all receive grants to do research, and those grants are coming from sponsors, and some of those are then also embedded in the public trust then of a group to do research. It also protects the patients and the public from erroneous data and misleading results. So why should we now understand research integrity in clinical trials? How can we enhance it? It's important to recognize one's own personal interest as well as all of those participating in the study. Sometimes this is not so clear always, and the declaration of conflict of interest is a very important standard and value of research integrity. This will also be ensure that we are transparent and honest in all processes. Ownership are also shared. It's not only researchers, but also sponsors and site staff and everyone involved in the bigger process. What is also important is that there should be active monitoring throughout the life cycle of the study. One of the things that is very closely linked with research integrity is misconduct, and we're seeing this increasingly more. Um, there is a world conference they have every second year on research integrity, and there they come together and also share, not only from researchers' side, but also from institutions, what are they doing to uphold research integrity. And the journals also now send their editors and stakeholders to come and attend these conferences, and they have valuable insights in how they review papers and how they look for any acts of violations. So it is important that we as the community also protect then whistleblowers, because this will ensure that we have then that we can uphold research integrity. It's also important to support open science so that the data that we generate is available to imitate again. This was important in the additional guidelines that SIOMS published in 2021, just after the COVID pandemic. And as they were indicating, is that rather use the data that's available as far as possible before you embark to enroll new human participants in the study. I'm also going to give you just a short nutshell highlight on the new ICH guidelines of 2024, where the focus is on strengthening the reliability of clinical trial data and results and to minimize factors that threaten the integrity of the study. So clinical trials, according to the ICH guidelines, are there, and it should be designed to protect the rights and safety and the well-being of participants. The quality of the design should ensure the trial quality and the risk that threaten the integrity of those factors and ultimately the reliability of the whole trial. So what is the key changes in the ICH 6 or 3? The key changes is then that they are focusing on risk-based decision making to enhance safeguards. They also focus on a fit-for-purpose design strategy to limit risks and promote technology-enabled efficiency. we often see now that there's much more reliance on electronic diaries and devices in our clinical trials. And also, since COVID-19, we also see an increase in, for example, e-consent, where there's a remote situation. It is easier to reach the patients, and they are also now more reliant on technology to assist in this monitoring. So, what is the risk-based proportionality that I are talking about? The risk-based proportionality is where the focus is on ensuring participant protections and data integrity from the very start of planning the trial. So it is important to emphasize all risks in the trial with any participants, especially those that go beyond routine clinical care. There always kind of a therapeutic misconception when you deal with participants or patients with a sick entity that needs to be recruited for a trial, because there could be a belief that a trial will be the only hope to be alive, and there could be a very real danger that I don't understand, and then it be accepted or accept the trial, but the research is actually beyond the clinical care, and this must be explained to them. It's also important, according to the ICH's risk-based criteria, to identify critical to quality factors and center controls around them. And then, of course, applying technology like e-consent for remote monitoring to enhance the trial quality. As they have added, also not for innovation's sake, but to actually add to quality. Now, what is meant with critical to quality factors? Only a summary then, it is defined as the absence of errors that matter. Again, it is emphasized that you begin with the end in mind. When you start with a clinical trial, it's important to do your planning. They indicate that with the critical to quality factors that you implement that from the beginning, from you planning the trial, so that you have quality in mind, and this can be improved in by prospective action to prevent important errors that could undermine the ability to obtain meaningful information from the trial. So the summary I've got from a document, a 24-page document from the CTTI that assisted with many factors that must be taken into consideration. And I can also send this to Lisa if she wants to send it to everybody that has attended today. Okay, so that is the end of my part, and thank you so much. And if there's any questions, you're welcome to add them to the Q&A for the Q&A session. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you, Tanya. So next up, we have our SAMAREC legal advisor, Reginald Masimola. He's providing expert guidance on the legal, regulatory, and compliance matters related to research, ethics, and governance. He has a deep understanding of the national legislation, institutional policies, and international ethical frameworks. He advises on our complex ethical reviews, research contracts, and participant protection issues, helping to safeguard the integrity of research processes. His role also includes interpreting legal developments in research ethics, supporting risk management, and promoting ethical compliance across all our committee activities. Thank you, Reggie.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much, Lisa, for that warm introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be taking you through what we will call the best practices for auditing as well as active monitoring. one of the things that you guys will see is that it's a requirement for us as research ethics committees to audit some of our sites, if not all of our sites. The bigger scheme of it is that we have taken much effort to ensure that the sites that we do approve, or the clinical trials that we do approve, actually do get monitored in as far as we probably can, taking into account factors such as jurisdiction, and also just the availability of the committee at large. So I'm most likely going to be one of the faces that many of you might see come through your doors, if at all we'll be going through an audit. So we felt it's maybe important to just give you guys a run through as to what does this audit actually entail? What will we be looking at? So firstly, our conversation will start at looking at the framework that governs these audits, and basically what gives us powers to actually come into your doorsteps. Just maybe as a disclaimer on my side, I'm one of those presenters that talks with his hands. So if you just see my hands moving up and down, this is just me passionately just sharing the information with you. So let us start the conversation. Just let me share my screen. Is my screen visible for everybody?
We can see it, thank you. Just full screen.
Coming right up.
There you go. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So once again, we're looking at the best practices for auditing and active monitoring. So before we start off, initially I had thought to just do some key definitions, but looking at the audience, these are just definitions that come through as part of our colloquial conversation, and which is nothing too serious. Basically looks at, for example, what is a principal investigator? Principal investigator is a person responsible for the conduct of the clinical trial at the trial site. These definitions for me, I felt was just maybe important just so that we are able to understand who are the people concerned in this process, because you will see later on, these are the people that come up and whose audience we will definitely request when we are actually coming through to do an audit. We'll also have a co-principal investigator, which is once again a qualified non-clinician scientist or equivalent qualified and experienced person who has provided trial oversight management and who is jointly and severally liable for the clinical trial. And the last definition that we're going to look at is that of a sub-investigator. This is any individual member of the clinical trial team designated and supervised by the investigator at the trial site to perform clinical trial-related procedures and or to make important trial-related decisions. So, as Tanya mentioned, that we have the Declaration of Helsinki, which is really a very important document that for us that really guides our efforts. But maybe perhaps not everybody has been exposed to the Declaration of Helsinki, and I just maybe thought perhaps just to provide just a brief background. Tanya touched on it very briefly as well. Maybe just provide a little bit of flesh onto that skeleton. So, what is the Declaration of Helsinki? So basically, the Declaration of Helsinki, it is a declaration made by the World Medical Association, and this is their best known policy statement. It is a statement of ethical principles for medical research involving human participants following the atrocities by physicians conducting unethical medical research during the Second World War. The first version of this document was adopted in 1964. So that already tells you that there's a very long history behind this document, and I think hence why its importance and the influence that it has on clinical research, and has been amended 7 times since. Most recently, as we mentioned, that we saw that the General Assembly coming together, giving forward the latest version in October of 2024. The current 2024 version is the only official one. All previous versions of this document have been replaced and should not be used, and it is actually encouraged that only citing this document should only be done for historical purposes. Once again, there's this important paragraph in the declaration that for us, we felt let us actually zoom into this document to understand, which is paragraph 23. So basically, paragraph 23 says, The research protocol must be submitted for consideration, comment, guidance, and approval to the concerned Research Ethics Committee before the study begins. This committee must be transparent in its functioning, must be independent of the researcher, the sponsor, and any other undue influence, and must be duly qualified. It must take into consideration the laws and regulations of the country or countries in which the research is to be performed, as well as applicable international norms and standards. But these must not be allowed to reduce or eliminate any of the protection for research subjects set forth in this declaration. It goes on further to state, which is for us very important, the committee must have the right to monitor ongoing studies. The researcher must provide monitoring information to the committee, especially information about any serious adverse events. No amendments to the protocol may be made without consideration and approval to the committee. After the end of the study, the researcher must submit a final report to the committee containing a summary of the study's findings and conclusion. So you see there, this is what, from an international level, endorses our efforts in order to audit as well as monitor study sites. So let's look at the institutional and regulatory framework that basically governs further coming home. We've looked at an international level, but let us zone it down and come home to a local jurisdiction. So in South Africa, the research ethics system operates under a national framework. We've got the National Health Act, Act 61 of 2003, which governs all health and health-related research. We've got the National Health Research Ethics Council, the NHREC, a very famous body that we all have interacted with at some point or another, that sets the national norms and standards for ethical conduct in health research, registers, and audits institutional RECs, which is RECs, and handles complaints as well. You will see that the institutional regs, typically based at universities or research institutions, are registered with the NHREC and are responsible for reviewing and overseeing research conducted by their staff as well as their students. So that is the framework in which we basically see these audits, or rather the participation of various bodies coming through. So what is the primary responsibility for the NHREC? You can see us just basically zooming in, once again, taking things a step further. The National Health Research Ethics Council is legally mandated to register and audit research ethics committees to ensure they are compliant with the national guidelines and ethical standards. The NHREC's oversight is a crucial component of the National Health Research Ethics infrastructure. So primary responsibilities for the NHREC concerning the auditing of regs basically is registration and auditing. The NHREC is responsible for both the registration and auditing of health research ethics committees and animal research ethics committees in South Africa. All institutions conducting health research are required by the National Health Act to have access to or establish a REC that is registered with the NHREC. A second responsibility that we see is compliance monitoring. Basically, the NHREC conducts regular audits to monitor and review research ethics committees for compliance with the National Health Act and the South African Ethics and the South African Ethics in Health Research Guidelines. Audits are often conducted on a 5-year cycle to assess the Research Ethics Committee's capacity as well as operational status. You'll see that from the list of the various responsibilities that the NHREC has, we just simply highlighted 2, which basically places that responsibility on us as research ethics committees to ensure that we audit and monitor research sites, because this is going to be one of the crucial basically audit compliance requirements that will be looked at in our report to the NHREC once we get audited. So now this brings us to the core functions of the research ethics committees. In the instance of our conversation, what are these responsibilities and functions. Firstly, it is to review and approve research protocols. Before any research commences, the research ethics committees must independently and objectively review proposals to ensure they meet accepted ethical and scientific standards. The review balances the potential risk of humans against the likelihood of benefit to participants and to the society. Secondly, a core function is to ensure participants' protection. The primary responsibility is to safeguard the dignity, the right, as well as the safety and well-being of all research participants. This basically includes ensuring risks are minimized and are reasonable in relation to the anticipated benefit. Paying special attention to the protection of vulnerable groups and populations, as Dr. Naidu mentioned in his introduction, such as children, pregnant women, pensioners, and those that with diminished autonomy. So you will see that in our later on in this conversation, these factors will actually guide us in terms of how we prioritize which sites to audit and which not to. Another key function is to promote ethical awareness and training. A research ethics committee promotes the principles of ethics within the institution through educational activities and training for researchers. You will see that for us also as SAMAREC, we have now taken on this training component as part of our core function. Another core function is to provide ongoing monitoring. RECs are responsible for the continuing review of approved research projects, including monitoring for compliance with the approved protocol, investigating any serious adverse events that may arise during the study, reviewing all proposed amendments to the study protocol before they may be implemented. Core function: investigate and address misconduct. The RECs must investigate allegations of scientific or research misconduct, such as fabrication or plagiarism, and report these findings to the relevant authorities. Another core function is to manage conflict of interest. The REC members must declare any potential conflict of interest related to a research proposal under review and recuse themselves from the deliberations. This ensures that the committee decisions are free from bias. These are some of the things that we will also look at once we actually come through to ensure that we do not find that members, or rather parties or study site staff, basically having elements of bias which may tend to compromise the clinical research. So let us look at SAMAREC's auditors and the auditing process. So this is just a picture of myself, Ms. Reeds, as well as Michelle. Ms. Michelle, when we conducted one of our audits just a couple of months ago. So what does the audit process look like, and basically what does it entail? Firstly, we'll have what we will call pre-audit planning. This is then later followed by on-site audit activities. Further to this would be then the reporting and the findings. Then lastly would be the corrective and preventative actions, which is basically pre-auditing planning. This is which will follow from the pre-auditing planning. And basically the cycle goes on. So let us actually take on these steps one by one and look at what each step will entail. Firstly, we've got the pre-auditing planning. The audit process begins well before the auditors actually arrive at the site. So basically, before we actually get onto the site, there's some groundwork that we basically need to do. Firstly, we first need to define the scope of the audit. SAMAREC will determine the audit's purpose, objective, and specific areas that are going to be reviewed. Audits are often risk-based, focusing on areas with the highest potential impact on patient safety as well as data integrity. Scheduling and notification. The site principal investigator is notified of the upcoming audit and the date is then scheduled. An audit agenda is typically sent in advance, detailing the required documents and staff who will be needed to make themselves available. Documents that are going to be reviewed. The auditors, which is SAMAREC, would conduct a thorough review of the study document, including protocols, the investigator's brochure, monitoring reports, and any prior audit findings. So before we even come on site, this is some of the background work that we will do on our side, just to ensure that we familiarize ourselves with the study and what it is that we are going to be auditing. And lastly, then we've got site preparedness. The site staff prepares for the audit by reviewing their trial master file and investigator site files to ensure that all essential documents are complete, accurate, and organized. Now then comes where the auditors arrive on site, and here we are doing what we'll call the on-site audit activities. The on-site proportion of the audit includes an opening meeting, document review, and interview with the site personnel. So basically, in the opening meetings, the auditors, the principal investigator, and key staff hold a meeting to review the audit's objective, scope, and schedule. It is an opportunity for the site to also ask questions to the auditors just to ensure and further to confirm any logistics. This meeting is simply also done as a meet and greet, firstly so that we can streamline what is our expectations are for the day and to ensure that all parties understand our role and basically the process that we are going to be following throughout the day. Facilities and resource review. The auditors will then assess the adequacy of the site facilities and resources for conducting the trial. This includes checking equipment, storage of investigational products, and the archiving of records. One of the things that we will do, this is basically where you guys will be giving us a site tour. During the site tour, we tend to be very actively involved and not just simply listening and taking on. One of the things that I personally like to do is to investigate, to rather interrogate and have good conversations as to the mechanisms and basically how things work. Looking at some factors such as load shedding, which used to affect our country quite a number of times in the past, which is still evident, but I think things have actually calmed down. Things like having backup generators are things that we will actually look at, because in the event of any emergency, we just want to make sure that we are all covered on that basis. We've got then the documentation review and source data verification. The auditors will then examine the site study file to verify that all necessary documents are present and correctly filed out. The source data verification is a crucial part of this process, where the data reported to the case in the case report form is compared to source documents such as patients' medical records to verify accuracy. So further, the documents are going to be reviewed, and what is it that we expect to see in this particular file, and what documents are we going to interrogate? We're going to look at the informed consent forms. It is also very important to ensure that when dealing with these forms, the patients are signing the most updated version at the time. Just something that is important to note that has come up in our previous audits. If a certain version of the informed consent form is signed and then later gets updated, it is not important to redo that process all over again. What we then simply check is to ensure that at the time that the informed consent form was signed, was the latest version the one that was presented to the particular patient. Basically, we're going to look at signed and dated protocols. We're going to look at protocol deviations. We're going to look at adverse event reports that are either submitted to SAMAREC, or as well as perhaps to the sponsor. We are going to look at investigational product accountability logs, as well as delegation of authority logs, if relevant to the particular site. Then we're going to have what we'll call site interviews. The auditors will then interview the principal investigator, the study coordinators, and other staff to assess their understanding of the protocol, their responsibilities, as well as the site procedures. They also verify that all staff have the proper qualification and training. So once again, please do let your staff know that we might have soft conversations with them. These interviews do not necessarily take the form of us having to sit down on one end of the table and them sitting on the other end. It can happen as easy as when we're going through the site tour, where I would probably stay behind and just have soft conversations with them. Just firstly, one, to fast track the process and not make the process any longer than it needs to. And then just simply, it creates a more cohesive environment, because that is what this process is. It is an audit and not a witch hunt. We are not looking out for errors or simply trying to fail the site. What we're just trying to do is we're just trying to ensure that there's proper compliance all around. Now let us move to the third step of the process, which is basically the reporting of findings. Following the on-site visit, SAMAREC will then compile a formal report of the audit findings. So basically, we've got what we call the categorization of findings. Any non-compliance issues are then categorized, typically as either critical, major, or minor, depending on the seriousness therefore. This is also then based on the severity of the deviation from GCP and regulatory standards. We've got then what we'll call then the distribution of the report. The final report will then is regarded as a confidential document, which will be then distributed to the appropriate personnel within the sponsor organization, as well as the clinical trial site staff. Then lastly, this is what we'll then call the corrective and preventative actions. The audit is not complete until any identified issues have been addressed and, most importantly, have been corrected. We have what we'll then call the action plan that will need to be submitted by the study site to SAMAREC addressing some of these issues. The clinical site must respond to the audit findings with a detailed corrective and preventative action plan. This plan outlines the root causes of each findings and specifies the corrective and preventative actions that are going to be taken place. Then we've got the implementation as well as follow-up. The sponsor is responsible for following up to ensure that the site has effectively implemented the corrective and preventative actions. This may involve re-auditing specific areas or conducting a focused follow-up review. Once again, it is also at this stage where you might also see SAMAREC coming through in order to do what we call then a soft audit, just simply to ensure that the action plan has been carried out as detailed. So, in summary, what are the best practices for active monitoring of research sites? We have what we follow, in SAMAREC, we follow what we'll call a risk-based approach. This is basically to prioritize high-risk research. This is basically research involving vulnerable population, as earlier mentioned when we did our introduction. This is, for example, research that involves children, pregnant women, or mentally ill patients. Or invasive procedures should receive more frequent and intensive monitoring. Then we have the review of all approved sites. While active monitoring may be risk-based, passive, paper-based monitoring, such as reviewing reports, should be standard practice for every ethically approved site. So while we might not necessarily take on the action of actually coming through to the site to do an on-site audit, one of the things that we do from our perspective as the Research Ethics Committee is that we'll take this approach whereby we're able to monitor, looking at the documentation that has been presented. From time to time, you guys might be requested to provide us a report depending on any risks that we might identify. If, for example, a research study site is investigating a low risk components identified, and we do not seem it fit for a on-site visit to take place, then we will request these reports and compliance thereto. Once again, we encourage you guys to please participate in these processes. Once again, this is not a witch hunt, but simply us just ensuring that compliance flows across board. On-site verification. Review essential. Once we are on-site, it is very important that to take note of the following. And this is basically what we are here to do. We are there to review essential trial documents. We are there to inspect facilities as well as resources. We are there to review informed consent processes. You will see that we will also go to the extent of wanting to confirm and check where the informed consent is actually taking place. We will check the vicinity, check whether that place is a private and secure place, check who has access to that place. For example, some spaces might have windows. And if then that's the case, are we dealing with people being intimidated through that process? Those are some of the things that we will look at when it comes to the informed consent. It's not simply just confirming it in writing, but we will also investigate the process in which that informed consent is being taken. To verify staff training as well as competence. Some of the issues that we do see from time to time is that some study staff might not be adequately trained or equipped in order to deal with the actual research. It is very important that we request from your side is that Lisa will touch on this part when dealing with site staff, that we ensure that the CVs are well updated. It is very important as well for us to ensure to see that training is actually taking place for the study staff. This training is very much important to ensure, firstly, that there is alignment in terms of processes and procedures. It is also important for us to ensure that this creates an opportunity for any information or rather deviations or updates to be relayed to the site staff and ensure alignment across board. And also, we are there to conduct interviews. Please allow for these interviews to happen. Don't feel anxious about them. Don't feel that we are trying to catch people out. That's not what we're trying to do. And once again, we are also trained to see if people have been rehearsed. We can see rehearsed answers. We can see them coming through if people have been given certain information in order to relate to us. This is something that from our perspective, we've been trained to pick up and something that we really frown upon. Please, once again, allow your staff to be open with us, to share information with us. I can't stress the fact that this is not a witch hunt, but simply a compliance process. So what else do we also look at? Providing written feedback. The Research Ethics Committee should provide written feedback to the principal investigators after monitoring visit, based on the monitoring team's report. It is also we are there to ensure corrective measures. When issues are found, the Research Ethics Committees must ensure that the principal investigator, as well as the research site, implement the corrective action plan, preventative plan, to address any of these issues that have been identified. So ladies and gentlemen, that brings me to the end of my presentation that comes through in terms of auditing of sites. I hope that this presentation has provided both you guys with some insight the next time you get an email from Lisa telling you guys that your site has been identified for an audit, that at least you now have an idea of what is it that we are going to be doing. You have an idea of the process at hand and can ensure that the necessary plans and procedures are taken into account. Thank you once again for your time, and over to you, Lisa.
Thank you, Reginald. Up next, we have the interesting question that's on everyone's minds currently, and that's the site staff requirements. Right, so basically with the NDOH research ethics update.
Sorry, Lisa, your presentation is in presentation mode on this side.
How do I change that?
I think you can do it at the top where it says display settings. Then you can swap it around.
Like that?
There you go.
Oh.
Just full screen that again. It's in presentation mode again. There you go.
Great. Okay, so all stakeholders in clinical research must undergo research ethics training according to the NDOH update. Who this applies to is the investigators, research staff, sponsors and monitors, and of course us, the Research Ethics Committee members. So basically anyone who's involved in touching the patient or touching the clinical data that is being captured. The aim is to promote ethical awareness, compliance and participant protection. Training should be ongoing and updated as per the evolving guidelines. So what does SAMAREC require? So we require evidence of the research ethics training additional to GCP. So acceptable forms of training, and this is taken from the NDOH guideline, accredited research ethics courses, short courses, workshops and conferences, recognized online training modules, in-house training modules that can be conducted by the sponsors and the sites, as long as it is CPD accredited and there is an assessment. We do accept the TREE ethics modules, 1 to 4, if 4 being GCP, but if 1 to 3 is obviously acceptable if you have the individual GCP certificate. So basically, any proof of completion of ethics research training. We are not extremely strict in the amount of hours that we require. For example, it must be 8 hours. It has to be conducted with attendance of hourly monitoring. We are just saying provide as proof of a completion of research ethics training other than GCP. I think mostly where this concern came from with the NDOH is that we all know most of us are dealing with multinational clinical trials, and they found that some of the researchers had only conducted the 1 hour GCP tree module, which obviously is not sufficient in order to capture and maintain the ethical requirements that is necessary for all of us involved in research. We do accept GCP training with research ethics, so it does not have to be standalone. If the course is GCP and research ethics training, this is considered GCP and research ethics training. So we do not consider this only GCP training. It will be considered as including the additional research ethics training evidence. So I think that's a question that we get asked often. So I hope that's clarified that one. I thought as everyone has got access to the guidelines, we thought it would be better to open up a Q&A for this section of the webinar. So I think what we can do is we can take 1 or 2 questions. I'm going to take here from Nompu. For site audits, does SAMAREC provide definitions of the different classifications? And what is considered minor, major, and critical findings? Okay, so that's more of a site audit question, but Reggie, are you willing to answer that question?
Thank you very much. In terms of the definition of what is critical, minor, or major, it depends on the effect that what the finding will have. So once we get to the actual site staff site, we will actually, in our pre-audit meeting, we will then have a sit down whereby we actually will take you through this categorization. Depending on what the research is going to be looking at, that will determine what will be determined as critical, major, or minor. So you will remember that what we did say is that in the process, we have the pre-audit planning that we do. It is in that pre-planning audit what we will then determine as to what will be seen as critical, major, or minor. So once again, it is not a once-off blanket because once again, it differs from site to site. But this will be relayed to you guys in the on-site meeting once we do come on board. I hope that answers your question. No, good.
Thank you, Reggie.
Sure.
Marty Conradi has a question. Could you please provide some requirements which are more specific to registries, or which requirements are not as strict for registries? Example, do all people involved in capturing data from medical records have to be GCP trained? Marty, if you look at the NDOH research ethics guidelines, they say that all individuals involved in research need to have the GCP and ethics training. So yes, we might not be as strict for the registries, but we will still require that there is some evidence pertaining to, and once again, depending on the type of trial that is being conducted. Reggie, there's another question for you from Rita Brits. I don't know if you've had a time, it's quite a long one, but I think this is an important query that's going to come up more often. Whether we need a separate papaya ICF coming up.
Is that the question, or does it get into more detail?
In the SA Ethics in Health Research Guidelines edition, it is mentioned on several places, including but not limited to, that the right to privacy be included and protection against unlawful collection. Is my interpretation correct that study participants have to sign a separate ICF from the main ICF to agree for the personal information to be used?
Okay, thank you so much for that. It depends on how the main ICF is actually worded. You will see that depending on how it is consolidated, some ICFs that we do see that are more recent now and more updated, they will in themselves actually contain the relevant POPI Act provisions in there, meaning that one, it'll give information as to the study side and as well as the risks, benefits, the voluntariness of the consent provided. But some will then, in order to just fast track the process, will also include the necessary POPI provisions in there as well, just informing that one, as you give this consent, you are further giving consent for your information to be processed, as you are then regarded as a data subject according to POPI. What, however, then is seen is that some prefer not to take that approach and would rather take then the split approach, whereby there will be a specific informed consent that is signed relating to the study, to the participation in the study itself. This is mainly seen whereby sponsors are very specific in terms of wanting that specific informed consent document. And then coming into a local jurisdiction, then there will be a separate consent form that will be taken whereby it relates to specific POPI provisions. So once again, it depends on how the approach is, but it is also important that because we're dealing in jurisdiction and as you saw from the Declaration of Helsinki, it is important that even our approval of research studies, that we do take into account local laws, and POPI is one of those that are coming through. And because we're going to be handling data of research subjects, it is important for us to get the necessary consent. So yes, you can take the split approach, or you can just simply update your informed consent document to include the necessary POPI provisions. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Reggie. I think that then concludes the end of this webinar. We will make this recording available because I know there are some CRAs that were not able to attend at this time. So the wonderful joys of technology, this recording will be available to share with your companies and to share to as many site staff that might benefit from learning from these presentations. All the presentations will also be available. And in closing, we'd like to thank you for your attendance today. And as always, SAMAREC is available to answer any queries electronically or telephonically. So just give us a shout with any of your queries or questions that you might have. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.